area is very specialised into energy management. As you'll see, I'm from WIT. I'd be a programme leader in the MSc in Construction and Project Management. My own main area would be from civil engineering, construction management, up along, but in recent years, as you can see, it's been very heavily focused on energy management, and that's basically the main kind of drivers on it. But as that's to speak, I suppose what I find more and more is that energy management and energy efficiency has become an enormous driver across most institutes and enormous driver across all industries at this stage. But the next kind of focus seems to have been moving across directly into lean, and lean is the big kind of push. And certainly at WIT, it's something that we're heavily focused on. We've got programs in lean, our own construction project management masters. From the new year, we'll have dedicated modules solely focused on lean in construction, and it's a big driving force. I suppose from my perspective, I see lean has been very much, it's directly in line with energy efficiency, and the metrics and methodology that we'll use to tackle both of them are very, very similar. So that's basically the purpose of what I'd like to look at today. Start off a bit left of field. I don't know, have many of you heard of Peter Drucker before? I'm sure most of you would. Peter Drucker would have been probably one of the greatest theorists on management in history. And Drucker is Austrian writer, professor. He's wrote an astonishing 39 books and multiple academic papers, journals, widely quoted, widely referenced all the way across the world. So certainly one of the great theorists on management. He'd be up there with Maslow or any of the other management theories you would have come across. But Drucker, one of the things that he was known as was the man who invented management. So that's the kind of scale that he was at. That's the level that he was treated throughout industry. Drucker is known far and wide. In particular, if any of you have ever had any interest in energy management, Drucker is quoted on a very, very frequent basis as, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that's Drucker's quote. And it's something that you would see as the tagline for, I think it's the tagline for conservatively in the dozens of energy management companies, particularly across the UK and across America. You will always see anyone selling energy efficiency products, if they're selling a smart metering, if they're selling anything like that, it will always come back and will say, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Usually they'll put Drucker underneath it. Sometimes they'll correct it and put Galileo underneath it, but the reality was neither of them actually said it. It's a complete misquote. So for all the work that Drucker did and for all the publications and for all the reference he's had, he's known far and wide, misquoted, basically. And the reason for that is because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. It's a lovely thing to say, and it sounds and falls in line with everything that we want, because it makes sense. If you think about it very kind of loosely, it makes sense that we should measure absolutely everything. And once we measure absolutely everything, then we can carry on and we can start to manage it. Now, if you think about that in practice, if we try to measure absolutely everything, what we're going to end up with very, very quickly is an absolutely enormous amount of dumb data. Enormous amount of data that is virtually useless to us, and that's basically what's happening extensively in construction. It's happened very, very extensively in manufacturing, in production over the years, where what we've done is we've said, okay, we need to go in, we need to put energy meters on absolutely everything. Anything we can get our hands on, put an energy meter on it. Anything we can put a flow meter on, anything to do with any widgets that we can get, let's build them and take them out. And what we're ending up with is, like I said, this dumb data model. And the reality of it is, because we bundle everything in together and we look for complexity in any model. And complexity and even concepts like more buzzwords like complex adaptive systems, big data, which I'm sure you're all aware of, big data, Internet of Things, all of these kind of buzzwords will all come together on the basis of pull as much data as we can get, pull it together, bundle it in, and let's work through it afterwards. Now, when we start to apply those models into construction is inherently complicated. It's inherently complicated. It doesn't have to be complex, but it's inherently complicated because we have an enormous amount of different parts, different components feeding into one item at the end of the day. So we think of taking two models here, standardized plant room and a MEP model taken across. When we look at these models, the amount of minor different components that have to be fed in, that have to be taken account of all the way through. Now if we decide that we want to actually measure every single item within there, and we want to track every single item, which is basically what's happening on a lot of sites. Again, are we going to end up with a leaner, more efficient process? Are we going to end up with energy efficiency all the way down along? Are we going to end up with energy savings? Or will we end up just with an enormous bill for capturing data? And even in a huge number of production facilities in Ireland, what we're seeing now is that the amount of data being generated is enormous, and the ability to actually analyse that data is getting weaker and weaker at times, because we're missing the point, we're missing the metrics that have to go through. If we go down along, we look at statistics. Statistics are be all and end all as we have. I thought this was a great statistic from last night. We look at Portugal versus Greece, and we see the statistics all the way down along. There we go, 66% possession, 34% possession, 9 shots on target, 4 shots on target, 9 shots off target, 9 and 0 fouls, throw-ins, offsides, yellow cards, red cards, everything. Data. Now that is one minuscule snapshot that we can take off a game. The amount of data we can take off a football match is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, even with GPS tracking on players and everything else that can go through, we can pull more and more data all the way down along. The one point, as I have there, and it's just one example, is there's one statistic that we're covering over. If we look over the data, we see there very clearly a dominant team. We see one team that was leading the fight, dominating the match all the way through, and basically statistically we would say was easily controlling that game. When we look at one statistic we're missing is the scoreline. The scoreline at the end of it all was the determinant factor. So, lies and statistics, do we just exclude that data? Or do we see, is it irrelevant? And the problem is, what the general mentality is that keep capturing as much data as possible, and we start to see trends, we start to see models falling out of it. So we'll start to see, say for example, if we go far enough into the future with enough data, we start to see a correlation between the number of offsides that a team has and the amount of time the team wins, and etc. etc. But again, we're going to end up with huge amounts of data that's pretty much redundant as we go forward with it. So we go back to Drucker, and what was he actually trying to say? And what he was trying to say was actually very clear. People skimmed over and just decided it was cool. We're trying to say that relation with people, development of mutual confidence, identification of people, creation of community, this is something only you can do. Cannot be measured or easily defined, but it's not only a key function, is one only you can perform. So basically what Drucker was saying is that don't look for something that's simple. Don't just think that we can find a simple metric and put that all the way through. One of the big determinant factors, one of the things that's going to drive control, and it's absolutely fundamental in lean. It's fundamental in lean, whether it's a manufacturing facility, production facility, construction facility, is that block up along. It's the relationship. It's how we handle our relationships within the company. And those relationships are never going to be easily defined or easily measured. But if we think about it, and we see the impact as we go down along, if we look for a relationship with, say, our suppliers, if we see how a construction company treats its suppliers. Now, historically, in construction, things are very much confrontational. So a construction company will normally have a somewhat confrontational relationship with their main suppliers, because they will always think the supplier is trying to get a certain margin on them and trying to make a few euros more. On one side, the company themselves are always going to be trying to pull back. So it's always that pull and drag between them, and that's historic, and that's going to lead into the future. Now, if we try to push that model into a lean practice into the future, we can see, going back to what Drucker originally tried to say, it's not going to work. It's not going to work if we're always trying to pull and drag out of each other. We do need that collaborative model. And the same thing, even with the relationship, we have to look at our internal relationships between all different bodies. And construction, again, is absolutely, above all, it's fundamentally more complex. And I don't mean complicated, it's fundamentally more complex than most other systems, because if you think about in construction, on a standardized construction site, just think about the different varying levels of qualification, education, languages, backgrounds, sectors. Think of all the different mixes that are on a construction site. If you think that compared to a lot of manufacturing facilities, where you have massive block of production, massive block of engineering, and that's basically the driving force. You bring that across into the construction site, you've got so many variables, so many different relations, so many different languages. And even languages, I don't mean, say, having like a Polish worker, an English worker, a Portuguese worker. if we have a electrical engineer sitting down trying to communicate back to the client, the language they use, like a fundamental for communication is that information is provided and that we actually get feedback, we get understanding. So again, that relationship has to be very strong. Those people have to be able to communicate across. So we look at key performance indicators that we had in construction, and still to this day, huge amount of companies will focus on these. They'll actually report these and they will focus on themselves. What are our staff numbers at? Are we down on staff? Are we up on staff? What's our turnover at? What's our profit figures at? But the question really is, do any of these give the level of understanding that we need? Because for any of that works in contracting in particular, it can be relatively easy to increase turnover. It can be very easy for most companies to increase turnover because generally, because of the models we have in Ireland, who will win the most work, who will get the most work, it'll be who's the cheapest on the bid. So if we want to increase turnover, we can increase turnover. We cut our costs, we cut our margin, we get our turnover up. If we look at that as a KPI, our turnover is up 20% this year. Is that a success factor? We could easily have our turnover up. Our profit margin, we look at our profit margin in isolation. Profit is one that is, again, the golden child. It should be all back to profit. We're making X amount of profit down the line. But we don't analyse the profit margin and see how that feeds back into our system. We can easily see that our profit margin has been determined from, we could be making 12% profit from 20% of our turnover, for example, and then we're basically counterbalancing all the way across. We can lose figures over and back. We think about lean, and lean is a significant shift across, in particular in construction. It's a major shift in construction. Continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is something that, again, it requires cooperation with everyone. It requires, we want continuous improvement. That's not just a personal continuous improvement. We don't want our engineers to be continuously improving. We don't want them to be CPD all the way up and along. We move away from the concept that we want our architects to be kind of separated out, our carpenters separated out. We have continuous improvement across the whole cycle. And with any improvement, as well as seen, there has to be a lot of honesty, looking at internally where are the failings, what has to be brought forward on that. It's a way of thinking and being, and not to go through say one by one, but the one thing you will find with lean is that lean is a real cultural shift, and that's going back to Drucker again. Drucker was very clear on what he felt was that it has to be integrated, it has to be a cultural thing, it has to come the whole way through. And this we'll start seeing similarities. We think about energy efficiency, when we think about energy efficiency, we think about lean. If we think about any of these programs, to get energy efficiency into a company, you will never be able to do it from the bottom up. It has never happened. I've worked on 50,000 or more projects with a lot of companies. It will never happen from the bottom up. The only way it'll ever happen is if it's delivered at the very top, if it's adopted, accepted at the very top, and it becomes a cultural shift all the way down and all through it. And we see that similarly with lean. If we try to adopt lean from the bottom up, it will never happen. It has to come from the very top and be absolutely spread across the entire company. Simple, common sense, accessible, and principles based. And one of the last and most important things, lean. If you were to take nothing from this presentation, and I doubt you will, but if you took one thing, lean is about value, and it really has to be about value. And in particular, energy efficiency has to feed into value as well. Because at the end of it all, if you can increase your energy efficiency, you can reduce your costs, you can provide a better product, a higher value to your end consumer. That's at the end of it all is the major focus. And value is something that, again, we find hard because it's so fundamentally difficult to actually determine value. If we actually did a poll, if you had time to go through, and I've had it with various groups, various speakers over time, if you got 50 people in a room and tried to get a general consensus of what value is, it's incredibly hard. People will have various different impacts on value all the way down along. It is about the voice of the customer, internal and external customers, adding value, and again we see value all the way through, and people are the ones that will add the value into that mix. Very important part, again, lean with everyone. The lean can be broken down to 4 principles, 7 principles, or 14 principles, depending on what body you want to work through. They will all come back to the same thing, that lean has to be a long-term focus. And in particular, what you'll see is that for that long-term focus, sometimes short-term gains have to be lost. So sometimes a company will have to invest in something for the long term, knowing that they're going to take an impact, they're going to take a loss in the short-term profile with it. And again, we see that with energy efficiency. We see a very similar pattern with that. We have to invest in the long term, maybe suffer in the short term to make that into a better system. Lean is about opportunity, innovation and growth. So if we go back and we think, moving away from the original, the turnover, the staff, the profit, if we move away from those figures and we think about these KPIs, we think about client satisfaction. And client satisfaction is, again, a separated kind of item for it. It's something that's not easily measured. Again, with most companies, we will look at various different methodologies, but we won't actually establish. How many construction companies in Ireland will actually determine and try to properly evaluate what the satisfaction of their client is? Very, very rare that we actually do that. It's like we don't close out that loop. And I mean, if that was in a manufacturing process, we would have to do that. We would have to get feedback from the customer all the way down the line. We look at defects, and just by default, even the term defects is such a negative connotation, it's such a negative scenario that we have. And even in construction, the fact that we treat it like defects means that there's always a reluctance. If we can end up in a scenario where we don't have significant defects in a project, we're very happy with that. We think that we've done well and we've moved away from it. The reality of it is that for a lean process to be accepted, for energy efficiency to be accepted, we have to accept and promote the defects model. So to push through with those, we'll see the summary of the different leans. Crucial of all the points to take out of it, the value is absolutely fundamental, taking that value all the way through, eradicating waste at all steps. And we see on this block here 5 different steps all the way through. Step 2, step 5, fundamentally about establishing and removing waste all through the system. If we look at just a quick figure, this is from 2013, as an evaluation, looking at, and this is a very well respected academic paper, and it references 57% waste in the construction industry, which is absolutely astronomical when you think of that kind of block. And we think about an industry where the profit margins that we looked at the very start are so low. If we think that 57% waste has been reported, it is absolutely astonishing the whole way through. So we look at energy efficiency and we think, how does that actually drive back? I suppose the one thing that I would always focus on is that it's not a fad through, and it will link directly back into lean processes in there. And we think, what are the driving factors? If we think that this is going to be a short-term, a short-lived program, what's going to be the energy efficiency for the next, say, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? And for construction, like I said, we have to look at the long term. 2 of probably the most powerful speakers in the world, it's probably not an over-exaggeration, Christine Lagarde and Barack Obama. You can see there how clearly they stated. They feel that it's at the absolute very pinnacle, it's at the very top. The greatest economic challenge, and that's the important part, the greatest economic challenge is not put down as the greatest environmental or anything like that. The greatest economic challenge of the 21st century will be increasing energy efficiency. Our housing stock, our building stock are all absolutely fundamental to drivers of energy consumption, so they're going to feed into that block. We look at how that feeds in here again. The Plan, Do, Check, Act feeds back into your lean process. Understanding your system, establishing your KPIs, which is actually listed in 3 different places there. Establishing your KPIs, monitoring your KPIs, and carrying on through. So you can see there again, Plan, Do, Check, Act. And this, just before I finish up, just one example of searching for anomalies all the way through. With a graph like that, it's very simple. You can't see this is 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock. That's an example of a consumption profile for a site that I took there last year. But again, the target was to reduce energy efficiency, or to reduce energy consumption. So the target was to get this baseline as low as possible, all the way up until this block. Now the problem was, on that site, they had never actually considered why was this profile here at all. And the profile was there, it was a very simple thing, just with cleaning processes and various ones fed in like that. So 50,001, again, same pattern, establish waste and remove all the way across with it. So for building the blocks, just to sum up, we're coming back to understanding, communicating the protocols, and feeding in energy efficiency across. Drive for clear KPIs, greater transparency, and above all, truly understand how companies are succeeding or failing.